who get ensnared in this get out of it as quickly as possible by using all of the governmental agencies in place. It's not a perfect system. If we didn't have such budget constraints, we would have more people on the ground from every agency.
Why don't you do something with the little boys being trafficked in the Montrose?
We do.
No, you don't.
Well, Harris County Juvenile Services does. I can't say we do for every single little boy, but if you have some names, we will investigate.
So the State Department, Mr. Ryan said this in their report that I read. This is a problem mostly because Linda brings up the global dimensions of this. Congo, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. I mean, what exactly are we supposed to do about that? Well, not buy certain products. How do we do it?
Well, that is a very important point because while we're talking about human trafficking here in the county, it is a global problem, and a lot of people, particularly your viewers, are going to wonder what they can do to help. A couple of things that I think bears repeating. First of all, if you suspect trafficking, there is a national reporting line. It's 888-3737-888. But it's also important for us sitting here at this table right now to become aware of slavery in our products. It's in our coffee, it's in our chocolate, it's in our clothing, it's in our computers. The only way slavery and human trafficking is going to change is when people stop saying, what? They're still slaves, and recognize that it is of epidemic proportions, raise awareness, and realize that until you become aware of the problem, you're contributing to it. And stop buying slave-free coffee.
Specific countries overseas that are engaged in your problem with the North Koreans. Your problem with the North Koreans is those people are desperate to get out of that country. The Russians send them right back if they cross the Russian border. The Chinese send them right back if they cross the border. So you actually have to get all the way down to Thailand or somewhere like that before they can then get to South Korea or somewhere else in order to be safe. The United States government, if they wanted to help those people, would do something by putting pressure on those governments not to send those people back immediately, to do things to help the non-government organizations that try to help victims of human trafficking when they get to safe haven countries, get out of where they're at. One of the points that was brought up earlier, and unfortunately we're taking this, as you said earlier, mostly on the prostitution. There's a lot of indentured servitude that goes on as well. Frequently, people that are approaching a coyote or a snakehead in the Asian community to get here think they're paying one price, and then when they get here, they find out, no, that was only the down payment. You owe more. So now you're going to go work in these fields. You're going to go work in these restaurants. You're going to be a housemaid, as well as forced to be mules for drugs and things of that nature. This is another form of the slavery that's going on.
This is happening because our immigration policy is a mess. Is that part of it?
That's part of it, but it's not all of it.
And
greed ultimately drives it. You've got people that are whether or not people want to hear this, and it sounds corny, people still look at the lady who holds the torch, as I heard one immigrant say. I always wanted to see the lady holding the torch. We still stand for freedom. We still stand for liberty. That's why people want to come here, and people are desperate to get out of their own situation.
We don't stand for it if you're just an ordinary worker, an ordinary wage earner, because we have no protections for people in the workplace in this country. We have no unions that can provide some sort of resistance to sort of the globalization of these products. You don't have to. We have no monitoring. We have no monitoring and regulation.
With respect, unions are part of the problem.
Well, and that is true. We do have products coming across from even places we can't pronounce, these small, tiny islands that we own that are produced in sweatshops. But the real crux of the problem is supply and demand. Yes, there are some little tiny.
Mariana.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry.
Vacation place. Yeah, that's right.
But the whole crux of the problem is as ancient as any problem, and that's supply and demand. If you cut off the demand for cheap labor in the homes where everybody wants to have a housekeeper and pay $35 a week, or if you cut off the demand for the commercial sex slave trade, which is a huge problem, and maybe it needs to be regulated, maybe willing prostitutes can become regulated, but at least we can get out these folks who are being trafficked into it. But we also need to raise awareness so the people who are buying the commodity, the human being, does not think it's okay. We do have a huge immigrant population, and a lot of people come across the border and they leave their families behind, they leave their wives behind, and somehow they think it's okay to go buy a woman for a night. And the demand is a big
I want to ask you, Linda, about this. I thought it was fascinating. This week's Houston Press has an article that was done by Village Voice Publications, which is what Houston Press is a part of, which is an older New York newspaper, but basically a giveaway paper. And it's all about sex trade and human trafficking. It talks about minors because there's allegations made, I don't know where, that 100,000 to 300,000 children each year are basically abducted and put into prostitution in America. And their survey said 827 arrests in the country were for underage prostitution, which shows the problem's not nearly that big. I think the more interesting question for you is, why would Village Voice run an article in every newspaper they have, giveaway newspaper they have in the country about this subject to try to debunk the idea that human trafficking is a problem for Jews? What's driving this?
I don't know, maybe because their back page advertises massage parlors, and it's kind of a feel-good piece. Although I'm sure, I think the Village Voice is a fine paper, and I think the Houston Press is a fine paper, and they do a lot of pieces of good investigative journalism. But the commercial sex slave industry for children is huge. We had a case here in Texas 2 years ago, and you're probably familiar with it, the case of the juvenile female who was 13. She was a runaway, and she was picked up by a police officer after agreeing to engage in a commercial sex act, and she was arrested, as a juvenile can be under the juvenile code for any offense in the penal code. So she was arrested for prostitution, went all the way up to the Supreme Court. A very fine lawyer by the name of Ann Johnson handled that case, and it was reversed because a 13-year-old cannot agree to engage in prostitution. So perhaps the Village Voice is bringing light onto the darkness of having kids out there in Montrose selling their bodies, because more often than not they've come from abusive homes, and try as we may, the system does need to perhaps, it may be a possibility because a lot of kids come from abusive homes. Kids don't grow up and say, I want to be a prostitute, I want to hang out in Montrose and get picked up. So we need to address that problem as well. We need to address the problem of the men who pick up these children to engage in these acts.
Female children.
And boys. Girls and boys.
But isn't it mostly, we're exploiting women in this culture all over the place. I mean, you just have to look at the last...
Yes, but girls and boys as kids, juveniles, boys in Montrose is a big problem. And I think it's good that they're shedding light on this problem.
I think what the Village Voice is trying to tell you is that for all the sizzle and pop that the government wants to give you about how massive this problem is, it's really not that massive a problem.
You know, I just gotta say that when you say something like sizzle and pop when human lives are at stake, I think it disparages the trafficking movement because, I need to finish my sentence, because it's not sizzle and pop. It's based on fact. When women are being raped every night, children are being raped every night, and it is a real significant problem. When you say it's
women and children
and when you say it's just publicity and sizzle and pop, it disparages all of the efforts of law enforcement from the U.S.
Well, you admit that 100,000 people is what CNN site says is sort of the population of trafficked individuals in the United States. We're a country of 300 million. I mean, this is, how big is it?
Conservative estimates say that there are 12 million people being trafficked into the United States every year, but the estimate is more likely 12 to 18 million. That's not sizzle and pop. That's a big number of people.
I think you disparage the true victims of human trafficking when you try and exploit their situation by pumping up numbers, by waging a phony baloney war, as phony as the war on drugs is, on trying to resolve this problem, when instead of seeking real solutions for these people, the real victims of them, rather than
what's your solution? Some market? I mean, you take your Gary's part
using the goodwill of the United States government to bring pressure on third world countries to do something more about what's happening in their own homeland.
But we can do a whole lot with Saudi Arabia, Iran, Congo, and
Saudi Arabia doesn't even let in certain nationalities. That's a whole other issue. We're not going to be able to negotiate with Saudi Arabia or North Korea. And rather than focusing on, and I can understand you having a particular bent that way, becoming a citizen when you're 14, but if we try to solve this problem first right here in this room by raising awareness, and then outside this door in the city of Houston, and then in Harris County, we can go a long way towards eliminating any illusion of sizzle and pop, working on the real problem, and helping victims of a very real crime.
I have no problem raising awareness. I have a real problem when it is being manufactured with false numbers. I have a real problem when the true victims, when they are identified, are instead re-victimized by the system and put in the criminal justice system they should not be in. You have people that are.
So we should legalize. Sweden, they punish the purchaser of the product, not the seller.
Well, for example, and I'm not advocating this, most of the world has very different laws concerning prostitution than the United States does. For example, the nation of Costa Rica, prostitution is perfectly legal. However, pimping is mandatory prison time, not jail time, prison time.
Well, maybe that's the next step here, but for the time being, I think we are doing as much as we possibly can in the short time we've had laws on the books. And as a matter of fact, while Houston and Texas may have one of the most severe problems, we are one of the most forward-thinking
Are we making
states.
progress?
We are making progress. Just this last legislative session, and Governor Perry signed in some very important bills that were put forth by State Representative Santonia Thompson and Senator Vanderputte. Extremely important legislation that tightens the penalties for traffickers, makes it that they have to register as a sex offender if they're convicted of trafficking, makes a repeat offender eligible to up to a life sentence. So
Texas penal system. That's the answer. We enlarge it, right, David?
I don't think more laws are the problem. I don't think more laws are the solution. I think better use of the resources we have, targeting them towards identifying the victims and then assisting those victims who really are victims.
we agree on that.
Okay. I don't think throwing more money at phony baloney investigations because somebody decided they didn't like the place their neighbor is going to get a massage.
All I have to ask you to do, David, is watch out where you buy your coffee. Thanks for being here, everyone. We invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPDS.org. Click on the logo.